As India goes on the offensive in Ladakh, the Modi government continues its digital strike on China. Today, the centre banned 118 more Chinese mobile apps, the biggest amongst them being PUBG. The popular gaming app has a huge following in India, and with this big ban made its intent clear, it won't shy away from making China pay.
After India banned TikTok, the axe has now fallen on the popular PUBG video game. More months after India's digital strike on Chinese applications to punish the dragon for the Galwan bloodshed, the crackdown is far from over. The Narendra Modi government is in no mood to relent. After banning 59 Chinese applications in June and another 47 in July, the Modi government has banned 118 more Chinese applications. 224 apps are now blocked in India. The latest digital strike comes at the back of Indian Army's offensive against the Chinese in South Pangong area of Ladakh. The spotlight this time is on PUBG. Although the video game has been developed by a subsidiary of South Korean video game company Bluehole, it is backed by China's most valuable internet major, Tencent. India is the largest market of PUBG. According to estimates from app intelligence firm Sensor Tower, PUBG has generated more than 17.5 crore installs to date. The other Chinese applications banned by India include Ludo World, Alipay, Faceoff, WeChat Work, Super Clean, AppLock and VPN for TikTok. While the centre's action against Chinese applications has been swift, there's little clarity over what the Narendra Modi government will do about Chinese telecom giants Huawei and ZTE. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, PUBG is, as we all know, wildly popular in India with more than 18 million installs. So much so that there's a generation growing up that is constantly hooked and attached to this action game. What makes it tick? Take a look.
PUBG is one of the most popular smartphone games across the world, and in India alone it has over 175 million downloads. That is 24% of its overall user base. The game was developed by Bluehole, a South Korean game developer, but the Chinese gaming company Tencent bought a all of this in the much popular Battle Royale mode, where the last man standing is the ultimate winner. And what makes it even more interactive is the multiplayer mode where you can play the game as a group with your friends with voice chat. Such is the level of popularity of the game that even Prime Minister Modi made a joke about it in an interaction with students.
अभी कुछ समय से ऑनलाइन गेम्स की तरफ उसका झुकाव कुछ ज़्यादा ही बढ़ गया है, जिसके कारण उसके पढ़ाई पर फर्क पड़ रहा है।
ये पबजी वाला है क्या?
Ban on PUBG might be an achievement for the government, but what it is going to bring to the Indian gamers is a sheer heartbreak. Harshit Joshi for India Today.
118 Chinese apps banned. Most importantly, PUBG. Shiv Arur joins us. He's tracking reactions to this big story. This really hits home in a way that a lot of people watching at this time really connect with. The fact that PUBG is being banned. If you look online, this is the one story that's trending more than anything else at this moment, Shiv.
Rahul, there had been a lot of suspense since the last couple of bans of apps about whether PUBG would be banned. And this had it itself led to a huge number of jokes, about unemployment and what will youth do if PUBG Mobile is also banned. And then today, this actually breaks, where the government includes PUBG in its fresh ban list of 118 Chinese apps. Now, the language being used by the government is exactly the same. They say safety, security, sovereignty, etc., is the reason for the banning of these apps. Of course, the other level is the economic offensive against the Chinese, because the banning of these apps, as we've been reporting, does have an impact economically as far as China is concerned. But that apart, the banning of TikTok was one thing. The banning of PUBG is the other. Hugely popular, wildly widespread, something that has become a kind of currency and a language that, millions of youth across languages, across strata, have become very, very familiar with. PUBG goes way beyond just being, a game or a mobile smartphone platform, Rahul. It's really become a way of talking, a way of communication. YouTube videos in their millions use the graphic engine of PUBG to create videos, to tell stories. So PUBG is something that is enormously popular, and banning it is going to have a huge, enormous effect. We're already seeing the beginnings of it on social media, and I imagine you'll see more of it up ahead.
Thanks, Shiv. Stay with us. Coming back to you for more. India seems to have now gone on the offensive in Ladakh. It's established positions in North Pangong, where the Indian and Chinese armies are now literally face to face. Chinese positions are in full view of Indian positions, making them 100% vulnerable. While India dominates, China fumes. Our Defense Bureau tells you why.
In the 4 months of this simmering standoff, China has never sounded this angry, this irritated, and clearly cornered. The Indian Army's actions on the night of August 29th have given the Chinese Army a taste of its own medicine. But there are very real, very specific reasons why China is feeling the heat south of Pangong. The Indian forces are currently in control of Black Top and Helmet Top, two dominant heights just south of the Pangong Lake. The Army's swift and sharp preemptive action on the intervening night of the 29th to 30th of August has ensured that it is advantage India. And this means that the Chinese positions in the area are directly in India's line of sight. An even bigger worry for China is that now all its entry points across the line of actual control are completely blocked. With a clear view of the Chinese posts and deployment, and two successful bids at thwarting Chinese attempts at creeping up on the strategic hills in Pangong South, there is for now no threat to the Indian positions. In fact, India has now given China a taste of its own medicine. With these tactical positions, Indian forces can inflict massive damage on China within minutes if the situation escalates. At least 7 PLA positions are now in India's direct line of sight. Indian posts at heights can guide artillery, and this means that Chinese posts and tanks can be destroyed within minutes. Chinese gun positions too can be smashed at short notice. With India at an advantageous position, PLA bases, camps, supply lines are also fully vulnerable. Even the smallest movements by Chinese posts now will be 100% visible to India. Another reason that has China seeing red is India's decision to deploy the Special Frontier Force. It was this regiment that pushed back the Chinese as they attempted to intrude on Saturday night. The Chinese were clearly caught off guard by the Special Frontier Force, consisting mostly of Tibetan resistance fighters, and operates under the Indian Research and Analysis Wing. The use of Tibetan commandos is seen by China as a deliberate intent to humiliate and a political assault. All of this combined has been a strategic, tactical and political slap to China, a country that has, after a very long time, been dealt with in the only currency it understands: cunning strength, dominant action, and with zero compromise. In New Delhi, Shiv Arur for India Today.
For a long while, India tried to resolve the face-off through dialogue. After China's latest attempt at betrayal, where they tried to move in forces on the south bank of the Pangong, India has gone in so far, it was reported, dominating the heights on the south bank. Now we're being told on that hugely controversial, very widely discussed Finger 4 as well, India on top of the ridgeline has established positions very close to where the Chinese army's positions are. If we were to wargame the current situation on the ground, where are we heading next? Is the India-China conflict heading towards a dangerous spiral? China is fuming. Make absolutely no mistake about it. They've been caught off guard. An Indian aggressive response was not something the Chinese were expecting. Now, where do things go from here? Joining us on this broadcast is Major General G.G. Dwivedi. He's been India's military attaché in Beijing, so understands what goes on in China. He's also been with the Special Frontier Force, the troop of Tibetan soldiers commanded by Indian Army officers from the para-regiments who carried out this very audacious operation in the South Pangong sector near Chushul. Also, remember the fact that these are Tibetan soldiers who are being used. That's a direct staring down of the dragon, as it were. General Ata Hasnain joins us, one of India's most respected military strategists. I've got Bharat Karnad joining us, one of India's top China voices. I want to go across first and foremost to General Dwivedi for his understanding of the current situation, because you've been in China, you've commanded the Special Frontier Force Battalion. What's your sense of the significance of using the SFF in this operation, Indian Army accepting that the SFF was involved, the Vikas Regiment was deployed, and the fact that all reports coming out of Beijing, especially the report of the US intelligence, seems to suggest that the PLA is fuming at this time?
Well, Rahul, firstly, always a pleasure to be on your show. And I'd just like to correct, I have operated with Special Forces when I was captain, and later I commanded 16 Jat, firstly on the Siachen and then thereafter in the Pangong Tso. And with Special Forces also I operated in the same Pangong Tso area. Now, let me give you the two perspectives. As you talked about the strategic and the tactical, of course, political falls in place. Well, strategically, you know, in current environment, is the tactical actions which have strategic ramifications. And, you know, the PLA and the Chinese plan was exactly the application of 1962, on which I also authored a book. They came in same three places at DBO, Galwan, and Pangong Tso. So the tactical intent was to actually shift the line of LAC to the westward, and strategic intent was to be in a commanding position, therefore to bargain it out whenever the border issue is on the table. Now, the significance of this action, because having known the ground so well, firstly, Blacktop is a very, very pivotal locality, because while it gives you deep insight into right onto the Sirijap and that area, it also denies the enemy any observation into Chushul Bowl, which is a ground of strategic importance, as also in this Spangler Gap. Having done this, now we have neutralized the Chinese advantage on the north of Pangong Tso, because on Finger 4, there is a height which dominates the forebrand bowl, and also Anila Pass, which we could have used to cut off the Chinese. So now we have squared up the game, and when we go on the negotiation table, we go on equal footing. Next point, this is the only way forward, because Chinese had actually dug in the heels. They are not willing to negotiate. Only way was to do counter incursion, and now future operation will be all in the gray zone. Gray zone is the contested zone that is between Finger 1 and Finger 8, and also on the southern side. So in my summation, I would like to say that this tactical action by the Special Frontier Force is a game changer, because Chinese have been given a very clear message that we will respond in same coin, and therefore sanctity of the gray zone have been lost, and we will also make gains as and when the ground permits and at the point of own choosing.
General Hasnain, what's your reading of the current tactical and strategic situation? Because on the one side, we've got India responding aggressively, making tactical maneuvers which seem to have caught the Chinese off guard. US intelligence reports seem to suggest that the PLA is furious for having lost these positions to the Indian Army. We're now entrenched on the heights. We're also reporting that in Finger 4 on the ridgeline, the Indian Army has been able to establish a position. Is this a strong enough bargaining chip for a quid pro quo? Or do you see China being so furious as to want to escalate, and that's something we need to be very wary of right now?
Thank you, Rahul. Always a pleasure to be on your show. And like General Dwivedi, I have the same record, Siachen to Eastern Ladakh and commanding there at Pangong Tso. So one knows this ground rather well, and I endorse exactly what General Dwivedi has just said. But there are three areas which we need to take stock of. One is the north of the Pangong Tso, the Fingers area where something has happened today. The other is the two areas south of Pangong Tso. One is the Blacktop and Helmet Top area, and what I learned is something more in the Razangla area. Now, the Razangla area has not been described by too many people, but that's a very important piece of ground again, which is the area which would have dominated the road going from Chushul to a pass called Sakala and going on to Dumti into the Indus Valley. That also apparently seemed to have been occupied by us, thereby denying that pass to the Chinese, and therefore probably enhancing your overall defensive capability in the complete Chushul bowl. As far as the north of Pangong Tso is concerned, no doubt that the Chinese may have occupied Finger 4 and moved slightly behind Finger 4, but there is always ground which is higher up, and we have done the right thing by sending out some patrols perhaps and gone and occupied certain ground which is higher and in a dominating area. Now, one thing you have to be cautious of, you may go and establish yourself anywhere. The question is sustainability and your ability to hold on. Now, most of these positions don't have any prepared defenses. Therefore, you have to dig down hard. You have to make sure you have reinforcement capability, counter-attack capability, if you want to make sure that you're going to give them a fight. Winter is not too far away, and I suspect that this is going to be held in winter too. So we have to have the capability to hold on these positions.
No, so can I just, for context of our viewers, explain what happened during the 1962 war, where the Indian Army, because of Prime Minister Nehru's forward policy, was asked to establish forward posts. But those were penny packets, which is what General Hasnain is referring to, very small outposts, which the Chinese were able to outflank, very often coming from the back, whether it's in the east in the Arunachal sector or in Ladakh, approach from the back, attack from the back, as well as send in attachments from the front, which led to these soldiers getting caught out in the middle. So how do we ensure, General Hasnain, that some of the mistakes which cost India in the 1962 war are not repeated in circa 2020?
Rahul, no battalion other than my own was involved in this. 4 Garhwal rifles fought the Battle of Jaswantgarh in Arunachal, Nifa. We lost 147 people fighting this battle. Exactly that. We were doing a covering troops action when the Sela defenses were being prepared there. And the Chinese are known to this, for this. They come and they contact you frontally, but invariably they also move from both possible flanks and try and engulf you, infiltrate into your rear and cut you off. Now, this is what we have to be careful of in a place like this. This is what they would have probably tried also in the Battle of Razangla. And this is what you need to be careful about. We are celebrating the moment, but this moment, everyone should be cautious of the fact that someone in the PLA is planning how to take advantage of the initial vulnerability that we may have there. And I'm sure all those loose ends have been tied up and closed, but no doubt that this was a great initiative. But the Chinese, remember, in mountains, there are areas which can always be occupied, which you may not have thought about. The Chinese, the area is still open. There are areas which the Chinese could come and occupy. You have to ensure that you keep them under surveillance and prevent this happening.
One is, Bharat Karnad, what's happening at a tactical level. On a larger strategic level, this looks like a free-for-all, race to the top, because in the grey area claimed both by India and China, there are dozens of peaks literally which aren't occupied. Now, in the LOC, several of those peaks after Kargil now have physical deployment. But in the kind of altitude there is in Ladakh through the winter, what do you think we're staring at this moment? We're in a very, very dangerous escalatory spiral at this moment. What's your sense, Bharat Karnal?
Now look, I don't think there is going to be any kind of an all-out war. When you talk about an escalatory spiral, you're talking about an end state that's really not there. you're going to have these small clashes and the kind of actions that we see on both sides. Tactical actions to be higher than the opponent at any point. Now, that said, I think we are also missing out by concentrating on the Pangong Tso in the situation developing in the far more important, I think, the Y junction in Depsang. They are blocking us, and we have so far done nothing to remove the blockade. The point I think to make is this. First of all, the action has been 3 months or 4 months too late. I don't know why it is that we delayed so long, possibly because we are trying to build up our forces and our stores and reposition ourselves on that line, etc. That's all very good. But then obviously there has been a failure all along to anticipate this sort of thing in terms of intelligence. That's also well known. Now, the point to make, I think, is there is, as I think the General mentioned, a time window. We are about 4 or 5 weeks before the first snow flurries come in. It is going to be very difficult for Chinese, as much as for us, to do anything beyond. Then it will be merely holding on to what you have.
No, but the fact is that the 62 war was also fought in November. So, while we say this, that there are only 4 weeks, that's the fatal mistake the Indian military planners, the Indian Defence Ministry and Army headquarters made at that time, sir.
No, that's what I'm trying to tell you. The point I think to make is, whatever the window, it's there. The climate changes. We don't know when the flurries are going to come in, and you're going to have the kind of weather conditions that are going to block everything out, including your actions. The point I'm trying to make is, we have this window. We have to maximize the actions in all the areas that they have occupied, like the Gogra Heights, like the Galwan Heights. I mean, we are leaving ourselves open and vulnerable, I think, to the Chinese moving in. And because they are so fast and their decision system, I think, is so coherent between the political and the military, which we don't seem to have, so that a decision made in Beijing or wherever is carried out almost instantly at the, in the front lines, in Ladakh or in Arunachal or elsewhere. That's where I think we miss out. And the other thing I think I want to point out is that we seem to think that talking and carrying out military actions are in some sequential order. It shouldn't be so. We cannot stand, as I think someone said, we cannot stand on where we are. We have to go ahead. One of the things we have to do is they are pouring troops in from the bridgehead they've established on the Pangong Tso. We really have to get to that northern shore, that part of the northern shore, to prevent the Chinese decanting forces onto the southern part. And this is where I think we really better begin getting far more proactive than we have been. They're just satisfied with, yes, the black top and so on, there's the red top to capture, whatever it is. The point I think to make is we have to think ahead to begin, in some sense, blockading the Chinese, or trying to blockade the Chinese on their getting across the Pangong Lake. This is a very necessary action.
Okay, south of the Pangong Tso, the area of the line of actual control that's currently simmering is now dominated by the Indian Army. This is of extreme significance, as this is that part of the eastern Ladakh sector that saw some of the fiercest battles in the 1962 war. Gaurav Sawant gets you the historical importance of South Pangong and the famous battle of Rizangla.
Seeing the Chinese army advance towards the area south of Pangong Tso, Indian forces quickly deployed troops not only to intercept the Chinese but also occupy higher ground in a part of eastern Ladakh that saw some of the bloodiest battles fought in 1962. Chushul in southeastern Ladakh, south of the Pangong Lake, was and remains a key defense area for the protection of the road to Leh. Therefore, occupation of Rizangla on one side and of Gurung Hill and Magar Hill on the other side overlooking the Spangler Gap to keep an eye and interdict the Chinese was extremely important. These areas saw some of the fiercest battles of 1962 as 124 brave soldiers of the Charlie Company of 13 Kumaon, led by Major Shaitan Singh, fought almost to the last man and last bullet to stall the advance of an entire Chinese brigade.
Indian Army has captured strategic heights on the southern part of Pangong Tso Lake. These heights have immense tactical and strategic significance, as whoever holds these heights not only would dominate the southern part of Pangong Tso Lake, but will also dominate by fire and observation Chushul town, Chushul airstrip, as well as the defense fortifications of India.
The main threat to Chushul was through the Spangler Gap, a kilometer-wide break in the mountains along the line of actual control, some 15 kilometers away. The Chinese had incidentally built a road from Rudok in Tibet to the Spangler Gap in 1962 itself. And this road was linked directly to China's crucial artery G219 connecting Xinjiang to Lhasa in Tibet. The army had even in 1962 deployed AMX-13 tanks at the base of Gurung Hill.
One of the most important aspects of high altitude warfare is domination of heights. When you dominate a height, you're able to look into the enemy territory. You can see the enemy posts, you can see the enemy logistic bases, you can actually also bring down targeted fire onto the enemy military equipment also. So whoever occupies the height gains a very tactical and strategic advantage in that area.
The army's move to quickly deploy and occupy the Blacktop Peak in Ladakh is not only tactically brilliant, but also strategically extremely significant. This is one of the highest peaks in the area and can dominate the Chinese side for several kilometers. This height dominates the Spangler Gap, Magar Hill, Gurung Hill, and keep an eye on the Chinese movement in Moldo up to Yula, keeping an eye on any Chinese movement and activity coming down from the Chinese highway G219. This perhaps is the reason why China is so extremely upset with India's brilliant military maneuver. With cameraman Kripal Singh in Delhi, Gaurav Sawant for India Today.
For a perspective from Beijing, we're joined at this time by political analyst NR Tenjen. NR Tenjen, you know, the US intelligence reports seem to suggest that the PLA is furious with their local army commander who went back at a time when the Indian army came in, established positions at the heights of South Pangong. The PLA pulled back. It's from the word that's coming out in the US media. It seems that the PLA is rather furious with the way the Indian army has gone in and now dominates the South Pangong sector.
Well, I don't know that there's this fury. I think the U.S. is very happy, as they have been, to stoke division between China and India. You know, even leading up to the Doklam incident, you know, there have been communications with the U.S. that in July, for instance, the U.S. is trying to resurrect the Quad, this kind of alliance against China. There were two military maneuvers, one in the Indian Ocean, one in the South China Seas. You know, this kind of confirms a pattern. So I don't know that many people are going to rely on what the U.S. is saying at this point. From China's point of view, you know, it's they're kind of puzzled. Every time they do something, it's considered aggressive against all comity, everything. But if India does it, it's a brilliant strategic move. I don't know exactly how you reconcile those two things. Either both sides are trying to come to some sort of accommodation, or India, for some reason, wants to use this perhaps as a way of deflecting attention from, you know, the more serious domestic issues with COVID-19, etc.
One second, NR Tenjen, who started this mess? It's the People's Liberation Army, led by your President Xi Jinping, that came into Indian territory and started this standoff in the first place. India's countermeasures now are defensive maneuvers to ensure that China's salami slicing is put to an end, Narthanjan.
Well, yes. I mean, that is your perspective. From the Chinese side, they say that it was the other way around, that it was aggressive moves by India in terms of road building, redrawing maps, and, statements within the Lok Sabha by senior ministers saying that they would not rest until areas that are currently controlled by China are returned to India. So, I mean, both sides see the other as the aggressor. That's why it's called a dispute. So this idea that somehow India is always in the right and China is always in the wrong, or vice versa, just doesn't stand the test of time. Now, please keep in mind, Xi Jinping is not my president. My president is Donald Trump. I'm not very pleased about it, but Xi Jinping, I'm an American citizen, and this is a Chinese Sino matter.
We've also seen PUBG being banned today. 118 apps, including PUBG. This is a second digital surgical strike carried out by the Indian government against the Chinese. And there's been a very strong reaction, a very strong wave of support in India for most of these apps being banned. Now, of course, with PUBG, there'll be some youngsters whose favorite pastime has been impacted and therefore they'd be upset. But largely, the ban on Chinese apps has received overwhelming response.
Well, I mean, so far China hasn't made a major response to this. They've sent warnings that they believe that this is inappropriate. But in the end, it is up to India what they want to allow in and not allow into their country. And so if they want to ban it, that's fine. But, remember, although there is a deficit with China, India's total exports, 15% of India's total exports are in fact to China, whereas only 2% of China's exports are to India. In terms of, damage to economies by, pulling these two apart, it's not that India will go unscathed. That's why it doesn't make sense for either party to be pursuing this.
Well, let the Chinese army back off, go back to where their positions were.
By former colonial powers who have an interest in making sure that Asia does not rise smoothly. Well, we want to see an Asia that is
the moment the actions of the PLA
by, conflicts, either political, economic, or even military.
The moment the actions of the People's Liberation Army start matching their words, then we will believe that China wants India to rise peacefully as it rises itself. As of now, there is an absolute standoff, and the people of India back the army totally. Jitin Jain joins us, one of India's leading cybersecurity experts. I'm seeing online and elsewhere huge unrest because of PUBG being banned. Naturally, this was the pastime of a lot of people, 20 million plus downloads. Many people addicted to the game. Why is this crucial? Why do you think the government's done this? Why do you believe this is important for India's cybersecurity? And what are the ramifications you feel may occur as a result of this?
Rahul, is that question to me?
Yes, Jitin, it is.
Hello?
Yeah, Jitin, go on.
So look, many people thought that India banning 59 apps was a knee-jerk reaction and government will not follow through and, it will be overturned by maybe in 2-3 months. But then subsequent banning of 47 apps and then now this, huge step of banning another 119 more shows that government is in a very determined mode, has done its homework well, and they are going to see it through and they're going to take this to a logical conclusion. And now number two, you see all these apps, they take all sort of permissions, every single imaginable permission on the mobile phones. They collect all sort of data. Now this data could have been weaponized. This entire technical, influence of China using these apps, earlier when 59 apps were banned, there were a lot of questions being asked that why gaming applications which have got huge influence, like PUBG has got 3 crore users in India, why they have been left out. So, government had received bipartisan feedback and they have look at all sort of applications, gaming applications, betting applications. Recently there was a raid by Enforcement Directorate where Chinese betting applications were found to be operating in India. So government have decided to put an end to all this mess so that China tomorrow is not able to use this mobile application ecosystem as a surveillance empire. Now you have to understand these companies are linked directly or indirectly to PLA and CCP. They are operating in a very gray zone. They come from a country which has banned all the Western apps in their own country, and they are expecting a level playing field in India and US and other parts across the world. So I think what government has done they have preempted a possibility of Chinese technological surveillance empire kicking in by preemptively restricting these apps.
Okay, thanks Jiten for that update. It's not just the United States and India that are at this moment at odds with China. The global community, in fact, seems to be rallying against Beijing. From Germany to Australia to the Czech Republic, anger against China and its aggression is mounting globally. Take a look.
From Australia to America, Germany to Czech Republic, China is in the eye of an international storm for its belligerence and its wolf warrior diplomacy. The Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is facing heat over Chinese actions in Hong Kong and Xinjiang. The German Foreign Minister, in a bilateral meeting, urged China to permit a UN team to probe atrocities against the Uyghur Muslims, leaving the Chinese Foreign Minister red-faced.
Und was die Uiguren betrifft,
regarding Uyghurs, they too were on our agenda today, and here too I repeated that we would certainly welcome it if China would consider the international community's concerns and would agree to allow access to the camps to an independent monitoring mission of the United Nations. I heard a readiness here.
China is also facing a severe backlash for Wang Yi's uncharitable comments on the Czech Republic Senate leader visiting Taiwan. The Chinese Foreign Minister had called the visit nothing short of international treachery.
Whoever challenges the One China principle is making himself the enemy of the 1.4 billion Chinese people and the abuse of international confidence. The Chinese government and people will never sit idly and let it go to the blatant provocation by the Czech Senate President and the anti-China forces behind him. We will make him pay heavy prices for this short-sighted behavior and political speculation.
But the mayor of Prague lambasted Wang Yi, saying he should immediately apologize for crossing the line of acceptable diplomatic norms. The mayor posted his letter to the Chinese Foreign Minister on his Facebook account, where he called the Chinese Foreign Office unmanned, rude clowns. On his 5-nation Europe tour, Wang Yi virtually threatened Norway not to even think of awarding Hong Kong protesters the Nobel Peace Prize this year, saying Beijing would view it as an interference into China's internal affairs. China's wolf warriors and the government mouthpiece has also hit out at Australia, going to the extent of calling Australians poor white trash for demanding a relationship based on equality.
And everyone else is involved in an industry with...
China, incidentally, is also facing heat in southern Mongolia, with widespread protests against Chinese trying to force the Mandarin language. The protesters see it as Beijing's attempts to wipe out their culture, like in Tibet and Xinjiang. Bureau Report, India Today.
There's only one way to deal with a dragon, which is to stare him back in the eye. You show a bully a sign of weakness, he pounces on it and tries to push you down even further. You push back, you fight back. You'll take a hit, but you hit back hard. That is the only way of taking on bullies, whether it's in a school when you're growing up or in the global ecosystem with a country like China that believes it neither needs to hide nor bide because its time has come. Well, 1.3 billion people will stand up and fight back. We'll continue tracking this story like absolutely no other network will or can. We're slipping into a quick break. I'll have more for you on the other side in part B of the Newstrack. Stay with us.